After an almighty all-nighter, Brazil's president has been impeached. The Senate voting to suspend Dilma Rousseff and start proceedings to permanently chase from power a woman whose fall in the twilight of the Lula years is as spectacular as her rise from trade union militant jailed and tortured under the dictatorship. How serious are the charges against her? Will Brazil be better off under a vice president whose own party is also deeply implicated in the Petrobras corruption scandal? We're going to take the long view on a democracy weathering both a leadership crisis and its worst recession in decades after 13 years of left-led rule. What comes next? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the end of an era. We'll be joined by two members of the Brazilian parliament who will be joining us. Also with us is Dilma Rousseff supporter Fred Lira of the March 18 Democratic Movement. Thank you for joining us. Thanks as well to sociologist Glauber Serrazino, member of The Other Brazil. What is The Other Brazil? Tell us.
It's NGO, it's an NGO in France who try to give another image of Brazil to French people, actually. So we have a site, internet site to translate articles from Brazil to French spoken.
All right. The Other Brazil, it's called. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter our hashtag F24debate. It was already morning when the final vote came in. 55 senators in favor, 22 against impeachment. There were early morning celebrations outside. For her part, Dilma Rousseff insisting she's not about to throw in the towel. She's going to fight for a reinstatement. She said so as she packed her bags and was defiant in her own statements as she spoke outside the presidential palace. Oliver Farry has more.
Dilma Rousseff was primed as a successor to the wildly popular Brazilian president Lula Inácio da Silva, but things quickly turned sour. Rousseff, Lula's former chief of staff, was elected in 2010 and was initially viewed as a solid but unspectacular head of state compared to her predecessor. But falling commodity prices soon began to sink Brazil's economy. Protests erupted against the rising cost of living and against corruption in June 2013. But Dilma still managed to win re-election 16 months later. But things only got worse. The crusading judge Sergio Moro's investigation into a corruption scandal involving politicians and the state oil company Petrobras engulfed Dilma's ruling Workers' Party. When Moro turned his attention to Lula, Dilma brought the former president into government to afford him legal protection. Dilma's opponents, accusing her of massaging public accounts to lessen the size of the nation's deficit, moved to impeach her. She said it had been planned all along.
Yesterday, it was clear that there are two leaders of the coup that are acting together in a premeditated way.
But her adversaries, including the man she defeated in the 2014 election, said the impeachment was the result of a popular revolt.
It was the people who did this, who first took to the streets all over Brazil to say no more disdain for the truth, for a right management of public administration.
The president is the main target of anger at Brazilian politicians, but her supporters point out that all parties are implicated, including the man Michel Temer, who would replace her.
And we're going to talk about Michel Temer a little bit later on, but let's begin with Dilma Rousseff. I'll start with you, Glauber Serrazino. She calls it a coup, is that right?
I think so. When we look at the movementation, the political field in Brazil, we see that a lack of legitimacy, juridical legitimacy to this kind of impeachment. The juridical process in the parliament showed that there is no due process. For instance, the defense of Lula, of Dilma, there's not been heard properly in the parliament, and the way of the person who also leads the process of impeachment. It's somebody with a lot of problem in justice, so it's a little bit complicated.
Okay, but how do you explain the one-sided vote? 55 senators for, 22 against. It's pretty resolute.
Yes, I think so, because that is an important thing to understand. Dilma and the Workers' Party lost their
Coalition.
Exactly, lost their coalition, and so that's what explains the 55 senators who are against the government and are for the impeachment. But it's not a problem of legal question. It's not a problem what if she do that or she do not do that. Is she lost her coalition, and so that is why she's impeachment. You know, the impeachment is there, and we live in a presidential state in Brazil, and that's not a legal reason to impeach presidents. It's not like in parliament, like in France. If the government lost her governability, they can change the prime minister and all that. In Brazil, we were elected for 4 years. If we don't have a crime, our actual crime, you cannot destitute a president, for instance, and that is why we think this it's a coup d'état in Brazil in this moment, because the crime is not actually there.
All right. Even Brazil's most famous senator, football legend Romário, in favor of impeachment. He's with what is now in the opposition center-left Socialist Party.
I carefully went through the recommendation document that Senator Anastasia wrote and concluded that there are enough indications to admit the process. That's why we'll vote yes to launching an impeachment.
Fred Lira.
Yeah.
Even Romário. I mean, Romário, we've seen him so outspoken against poverty, against corruption. Here he is arguing in favor of Dilma's impeachment.
I think it's very strange, Romário, and also some others people that came from really poor places. They are voting against Dilma, against the democracy for this impeachment, illegal impeachment, as Glauber says, because if something that is important to say that the Lula government and also Dilma in the sequence did was really change the life of the really poor people with the structure, the way of life of those places where, for example, Romário came from. So in a way, he's not voting only for the impeachment, he's voting also against his own people. We can say like this, because he's voting against the government that made more change for the people, the place where he came from. So in a way, he forgets Romário precisely, but others also, their roots.
All right, we're having trouble connecting with Brasilia, but we will be in touch with another member from Romário's party, Luis Lauro Filho, who's a member of parliament in a short while. This number, it doesn't bode well when it comes to that trial that's going to take place in the Senate to permanently remove Dilma Rousseff.
But you have to think also with I mean, you have this coalition that Glauber was saying, but also the crisis, but also the corruption crimes that are investigated. Because this is important to talk about. Never before in the history of Brazil, we investigate so many corruption crimes. And only in the Senate, more than 40 senators are persecuted or accused and formally accused of corruption. So it's not a coincidence that they are putting out, we can say, a government that tried to investigate more seriously corruption, and they are some of the people that are investigated. So, I mean, this is this kind of
but it's
conflict.
people on both sides of the aisle, including the former president himself, who are implicated.
The former president, Dilma, was never formally implicated. Her name never appeared. So, I mean, she never be formally accused personally. So if
not so far, but she did sit on the board of state oil company Petrobras.
But even in this case, she wasn't accused, personally accused. So it's very different if you take some senators or some deputies that are formally accused for corruption, that we have documents that prove, and she doesn't have. So I mean, this is what Glauber is saying. This is a illegal process and a state coup, because we don't have a crime formally against the president.
All right, we have the beginning of a process that's due to last 6 months, but it could be longer.
Yes.
She can be suspended up to 18 months, Dilma Rousseff. And at the same time, as Fred Leroy was just saying, we're going to have those corruption investigations against members on both sides of the aisle that are going to continue. So what is this? How does this bode for Dilma Rousseff? With the numbers you saw in that vote, is it a sure thing that she will be chased from power?
That is, I think, it's more complicated because we don't know where the process we're gonna finish. Because now we have a vice president with no popular support, with a right wing scattered between different interests. So the vice president can finish even the 6 months. I don't think so. That is a problem. We have to deal with that. So between this 6 months, a lot of things are gonna happen in Brazil, especially the militants, the left-wing activists who are gonna take down the streets, and the right-wing activists also who are gonna confront this kind of activism, of left activism. So I don't think we can I don't know predict actually what's gonna happen in the next 6 months, because it's really a instability moment without precedent in the recent history of Brazil. I want to just made a little comment, because the impeachment process is not about corruption.
Yeah, this is important.
It's about financial mismanagement and the disguising of the books, it seems.
Disguising of the books that everybody does. Even the vice president signed this kind of movement. So,
and the upshot of that has been what our correspondent Richard Thompson was telling us a little while earlier. Ordinary Brazilians that he spoke to in Rio saying they're disgusted with politicians from all sides after all of this. When you hear remarks from ordinary citizens like that, do you say to yourself, it's a good thing or not that this corruption scandal, the Lava Jato scandal, has come about, that it's surfaced, that there are people going after corruption?
Per se, it's a good thing, but the problem is the use of this process, the use of this investigation. Because at the beginning, everybody thought that, oh, it's a good thing. Finally, in the Brazilian history, you're gonna put in jail entrepreneurs who did corruption. Not only the corrupted politician, but also the people who pay them. So, okay, it's a good thing, but we saw that little by little, the investigation was centered in one specific group of the political field. So I don't know if we're going to continue with this investigation after that the aim was achieved. The aim was impeach Dilma, to put her aside of the state. So I don't think the process, the judicial process, the investigation, going to continue like before. That is a thing to do, thing to see. So if they continue, I think everybody's gonna be touched, because it's the way of function of the Brazilian political field.
If you're just joining us here on France 24, we're having connection issues. We're unable so far to reach members of parliament who are in favor of this impeachment that we've seen of Dilma Rousseff. Since the return to democracy, 4 presidents, the second one impeached. What does that tell you?
It tells that this democracy, the representative democracy in Brazil, is over, I think.
It's over?
Yeah, I think that this situation, in a way, shows that the way it works, the way it's putting in this kind of working, shows that it's failed. I mean, we have to reinvent it from the beginning. That's the reason. That's what we from MD18 and all other movements from the left wing from Brazil are trying to think and reinvent it from today. Because in this process, the way it went on, shows that the limits of this kind of representative democracy that we have in Brazil, and in the example that you just gave is very important, that the most common people, the poor, the people that are excluded from the public debate, they, in a way, they hate politics because they don't see that the politics is something that makes part of the daily life, or should make part of the daily life. So if we keep going on with this kind of system, with this kind of democracy, or limited democracy, in a way, it shows that has this limit. So we have to think,
all right,
to reset and begin from the beginning, I think.
Let's bring in now Mara Gabrilli, Member of Parliament for the PSDB party, who joins us from Brasilia. And apologies for the technical issues we've had reaching Brazil in this show. Mara, thank you for joining us. We have on set two people who have branded the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff a coup. Is it a coup?
No, it's not a coup. Anyway, it's not a coup. It's very constitutional, and it was approved by the Superior Court here in Brazil. It's not a coup.
All right. And we just heard Fred Lira say that the faith in democratic institutions is being rocked by this process, and that there'll be a boomerang effect that will shatter the credibility of politicians from all sides because of what's going on. What's your reaction?
We have here the crime committed for non-compliance with these provisions. Because of this is not a coup. And also we have irregularities in the budgetary management. So we have reason for this impeachment. And even we are in a very, very deep recession, and also in a corruption time in this country.
Mara Gabrilli, we're going to try to call you back and get a better connection with Brasilia. Stay with us, everyone. We're watching the France 24 debate.